In the last class, we were discussing regarding design for testability. So, under this section, we discussed regarding ad hoc testing and scan-based approaches. So, this session, let me continue with the explanation of scan-based approaches. In the last session, we have discussed regarding the scan-based design. So in this structure of scan-based design, here the bits are serially scanned in and then they are serially scanned out. So the problem with this structure is that the chains become very long and loading and unloading can dominate the testing time. Okay, so in order to overcome this problem, here we can split the chains into smaller segments. This can be done on a module by module basis or completely automated to some specified scan length. To overcome the problem with the previous structure, we can go for a scan based approach, that is parallel scan based approach. The basic idea is to divide the structure into small modules. The figure shows 2 by 2 register section. Each register, it receives a column and row axis line along with the data line. So here in the figure you can see row, that is row n and row n plus 1, as well as column m and column m plus 1 lines. So along with that you find a data line. So in this figure you have data n and data n plus 1 line. So here a global write signal is connected to all the registers. So here we can perform read operation as well as write operation, that is by asserting the row and the column axis lines along with the write signal. Any register can be read or written in exactly the same method as conventional RAM. So to the right hand side you can see the diagram where you find there along with the flip-flop we have a multiplexer and we are using the control lines, that is row select, column select, to data as well as the write control line. To perform scan design, scannable flip-flops are required. An ordinary flip-flop can be made scannable by adding a multiplexer on the data input. So in the figure A you can see how a ordinary flip-flop is converted to a scannable flip-flop. So here there is a multiplexer connected in series with the flip-flop. Figure B, okay, so it is a detailed structure, that is the internal structure of figure A, okay, where the circuit design for the scan register is done using a transmission gate multiplexer. And the problem with this structure is that the setup time increases by the delay of the extra transmission gate in series with the D input. The setup time, it is defined as the minimum amount of time before the clock's active edge by which the data must be stable for it to be latched correctly. So any violation in this causes incorrect data to be captured and this is known as setup violation. So in the figure C, here a slight modification is made in the circuit. The circuit uses clock gating to obtain nearly the same setup time as that of the ordinary flip-flop. In the previous slides we have discussed regarding the scannable flip-flops. During scan mode, the flip-flops are connected back to back. Clock skew can lead to hold time problems in the scan chain. Clock skew, it is a phenomena in the synchronous digital circuit system in which the same clock signal arrives at different components at different times. The instantaneous difference between the readings of any two clocks is called their skew. And the hold time, it is the minimum amount of time a synchronous data input should be held in steady state after the clock event so that the data input is reliably sampled by the clock event. These problems can be overcome by adding delay buffers on the SI input to the flip-flops. One more approach to overcome this is to use level sensitive scan design. This level sensitive scan design, it is a methodology that was developed at IBM. It uses flip-flops with two-phase non-overlapping clocks. During scan mode, a scan clock phi s is toggled in the place of phi 2. So you can see this in the figure. So here for D input, phi 2 and phi 2 bar, these are the control inputs given to the transmission gate, but whenever SI, that is for scanning input, is given, phi s and phi s bar, these are the control inputs that is given to the SI input. The non-overlapping clocks also prevent hold time problems in the normal operation. Alternatively, phi 1 and phi 2 can be complementary clocks, but phi s can be non-overlapping to prevent erasers. In the figure, that is figure C, it shows a conventional design using a feedback inverter on the master latch that can be overpowered when either the phi 2 or phi s transmission gates are on. In the previous slides, we have seen how a flip-flop can be used for scan purpose. Systems that uses latches can also be used for scan. A scan input and an additional slave scan latch are added to convert the latch into a scannable flip-flop. In this figure, you can see how a latch is used for scan purpose. During scan, the global clock is made low. With this, phi 1 is low and the latch is opaque. Then, the two-phase non-overlapping scan clock, represented as phi 1s and phi 2s, they are toggled to send the data through the scan chain. The SO, that is the scan out terminal of each latch, it connects to the scan in terminal, that is SI, of the next latch. Built-in self-test, it is a mechanism that permits the machine to test itself. It is a technique of designing additional hardware and software features into the integrated circuit to allow them to perform self-testing. That means, in the case of built-in self-test, no additional equipment is required to perform the testing. Whatever circuit is required to perform the testing is inbuilt in the IC. So, built-in self-test is capable to perform self-test. It does not need any expensive automated test equipment to perform the testing, whereas previously testers were required or automatic test equipments were required, and the circuits on the IC, it was placed on these testers, and then the testing was carried out. But with the introduction of built-in self-test, no additional equipment is required to perform the testing. The main purpose of built-in self-test is to reduce the complexity and thereby decreasing the cost of the IC. This is the architecture of built-in self-test. The basic built-in self-test architecture, it requires the addition of 3 hardware blocks to a digital circuit. That is a test pattern generator, a response analyzer, and a test controller. The test pattern generator, it generates the test patterns for the circuit under test. Test pattern generators can be a ROM with stored patterns, or it may be a counter, or it may be a linear feedback shift register. A typical response analyzer, it is a comparator with stored responses or a linear feedback shift register used as signature analyzer. It compacts and analyzes the test responses to determine the correctness of the circuit under test. A test control block, it is necessary to activate the test and analyze the responses. Let us look into the functionality of each block. Hardware test pattern generator. This module generates the test patterns required to sensitize the faults and propagate the effect of the outputs. The test pattern generator, it is basically a type of register which generates random patterns which acts as test patterns. Okay, so here hardware test pattern generator, here in this case we will be making use of a pseudo random signal generator which actually generates random patterns. The next block is the input mux. This multiplexer is to allow normal inputs to the circuit when it is operational and test inputs from the pattern generator when BIST is executed. The control input of the multiplexer is fed by a central test controller. So muxer, in order to control this muxer, control input is given from the test controller. So here either like for normal operation input sequences are allowed to the mux, and for built-in self-test the pseudo random pattern generating signals, those signals are passed through the mux. Output response compactor. Output response compactor, it performs lossy compression of the outputs of the circuit under test. As in the case of offline testing, in built-in self-test, the output of the circuit under test is to be compared with the expected response. If circuit under test output does not match the expected response, fault is detected. Similar to the situation for test pattern generator, the expected output responses cannot be stored in a memory and compared with the response of the circuit under test. So circuit under test response needs to be compacted such that the comparisons with the expected responses, that is the golden signatures, become simpler in terms of area of the memory that stores the golden signatures. In normal operation, the circuit under test, it receives its inputs from other modules and performs the function for which it was designed. During test mode, a test pattern generator circuit, it applies a sequence of test patterns to the circuit under test, and the test responses are evaluated by a output response compactor. In the most common type of built-in self-test, test responses are compacted in output response compactor to form signatures. The response signatures are then compared with the reference golden signatures generated or stored on the chip, and the error signal, it indicates whether chip is good or faulty. Then the function of the ROM, it is to store golden signature that needs to be compared with the compacted circuit under test response. So previously the golden signature, that is nothing but the reference signatures, everything will be stored in the ROM. Comparator. The function of the comparator is to compare the compacted circuit under test response and the golden signature. So here in the comparator, the generated response, it will be compared with the reference response. Okay, and then a decision will be made regarding whether the circuit is functioning correctly or not. Test controller. The function of the test controller is to control the built-in self-test. When an IC is powered up, the test controller, it starts the built-in self-test procedure. Once the test is over, the status line is made high if fault is found. Following that, the controller connects normal inputs to the circuit under test via the multiplexer, thus making it ready for operation. That means the testing is done initially when the power is turned on. First, it will check whether the circuit is functioning properly. Then, based on the result, then the normal inputs can be fed in. Let us look into the working of built-in self-test. In the built-in self-test, the circuit tests itself. First, it generates the pseudo-random inputs to the combinational logic. Then it will convert the output into a syndrome. With a high probability, block is fault-free if it produces the expected syndrome. Here, the output whatever is obtained, it is compared with the golden signature. If it is same, that means block is error free, else it indicates that there is some error in the circuit. Let us look into the working of the pseudo-random binary sequence generator. Here the pseudo-random signals need to be generated first. There are different ways to generate the pseudo-random signal generator. Here we will be using a linear feedback shift register in order to generate the sequences. So the practical approach for generating the test vectors on chip is to use pseudo-random test. The generator for the pseudo-random test is easily constructed using the feedback shift register circuit known as linear feedback shift register. So here the shift register is nothing but arrangement of flip-flops. So here in this case we are using the flip-flops and an XOR gate is used to design a linear feedback shift register. Next, let us see how the sequences are generated. Let us see how sequences are generated using a linear feedback shift register. Here in the linear feedback shift register, you can see in this case there are 3 D flip-flops. Okay, and the output, it is represented as Q0, Q1 and Q2. Next, let us consider the sequence, the first sequence, the inputs. We are loading 1 and 1 and 1. Okay, this is the output of Q2, Q1 and Q0. So here you can see an XOR gate that is connected, and the output of the Q2 and Q0, it is given as inputs, and the output of the XOR gate is given to the first flip-flop. So the next sequence generated will be Q2 means Q2 gets the value of Q1. So Q2 becomes 1, Q1 also becomes 1, and Q0 value, it is the previous Q0 XORed with Q2 value, that is 1 XOR with 1, the output is 0. So the next sequence generated will be 1 1 0. Suppose now the first sequence is 1 1 1. Then for the next clock pulse that is applied, the sequence becomes 1 1 0. So how 1 1 0 is obtained, let us see. So here Q2, if it is 1, Q1 is 1, Q0 is 1. For the next clock pulse, Q2 gets the value of Q1, Q1 gets the value of Q0, and Q0 value will be Q0 XORed with Q2 value. So the next pattern will be 1 1 0. After that, for the next clock pulse, the bits will be 1, 0 and then 1 XORed with 0, that is the output is 1. Okay, XOR operation is performed. XOR operation of Q2 and Q0 is performed. For the next clock pulse, the bits get shifted. Q2 gets a value of Q1, Q1 gets a value of Q0, then Q2 and Q0 is XORed. In this case it is 1 and 1, hence the output is 0. Similarly, you get the remaining patterns. The next pattern will be 0 1 0, after that 1 0 0, then 0 0 1 0 1 1, and after that it is 1 1 1. So the cycle repeats. The combination of signature analysis and the scan technique, it creates a structure known as built-in logic block observation. The built-in logic block observation, it combines the normal flip-flops with a few additional gates to provide 4 different functions, that is based on the value of C0 and C1. If C1, C0 values are 0 and 0, then it works in scan mode. If C1, C0 values are 0, 1, then it works in test mode. If C1, C0 values are 1, 0, then it works in reset mode, and if C1, C0 values both are 1, then it works in normal mode. So this C1 and C0, it specifies the mode of operation. In the reset mode, all the flip-flops are synchronously initialized to 0. That means the flip-flop values are made 0 using the reset mode. In the normal mode, the flip-flops behave normally with D as input and Q as output. That is for C1, C0 values as 1, 1. That it performs the normal operation of the flip-flop. In scan mode, that is C1, C0, when it is 0, 0, the flip-flops are configured as 3-bit shift register between between SI and S0, that is serial in and serial out. So the input is SI and the output is S0. In test mode, that is when C1, C0 value, when it is 0, 1, the register behaves as the pseudo random sequence generator or signature analyzer. Here, built-in self-test, it is performed by first resetting the syndrome in the output register. Then both the registers are placed in the test mode to produce the pseudo-random inputs and calculate the syndrome. Finally, the syndrome is shifted out to the scan chain. Memory self-test. This is used for checking the functionality or verifying the functionality of the memory. With the ever increasing size and the number of memories in the systems on chip, it is a great challenge for the designers and the test engineers to verify the functionality of the memory. This memory functionality can be verified using automatic test pattern generators, but it requires a huge test time and more cost is involved. So as an alternate, the memory functionality can be verified through built-in self-test. This built-in self-test is an inbuilt testing circuitry within the software or the hardware module. We just need to trigger the circuitry from outside. The built-in self-test that is employed for memories is known as memory built-in self-test. Like the ordinary built-in self-test, memory built-in self-test logic is inbuilt within the memory. It is capable of running several algorithms to verify the functionality of the memory. The explanation is given in this slide. This memory self test, the function is similar to that of the built-in self test, but the only difference is that it is used for checking the functionality of the memory. There is a wrapper around the memory. This wrapper embedded, that memory built-in self-test wrapper, it includes a multiplexer and the memory. This is also called as a memory caller, and it is used to select between the functional inputs and the test inputs based on the memory built-in self-test functional mode selection bit. So it can, using a multiplexer, either the normal inputs or the test inputs are taken. Okay. Then it also interfaces the memory with the on-chip logic and the memory built-in self-test controller. This memory built-in self-test controller, it indicates the start of the memory built-in self-test with a select input. The memory then starts the built-in self-test algorithms and provides the test output to the controller. The controller, it then compares this output with a reference output and indicates if the memory built-in self-test has passed or failed. There can be one controller for several memories. Also, the memories can share the caller depending upon the test time requirement and the type of memories. The explanation for the previous block diagram is given in this slide. IDDQ testing. IDDQ is the IEEE symbol for direct drain quiescent current. This IDDQ testing, it measures the current to discriminate between a good and a defective chip. It works on the principle that the complementary MOS, that is CMOS, it does not draw any current from the power supply when its inputs are static, that is when it is not switching. But in reality, a small leakage current, which typically is of a smaller magnitude than the switching current, exists. So here in the circuit, you can find there is a bridging fault. A method of testing for bridging fault is called IDDQ test or supply current monitoring. This relies on the fact that when a complementary CMOS logic gate is not switching, it does not draw any DC current except for some leakage current. When a bridging fault occurs, then for some combination of input conditions, a measurable DC, that is IDD, will flow. Testing consists of applying the normal vectors, then allowing the signals to settle, and then measuring IDD. As potentially only one gate is affected, this IDDQ test has to be very sensitive. Then only it can be measured. To be effective, then in any circuits that draw DC power, such as pseudo NMOS gates or analog circuits, it has to be disabled. This dynamic gates can also cause problems. IDDQ testing can be completed externally to the chip by measuring the current drawn on the VDD line or internally using specially constructed test circuits. So in this session we have discussed regarding the parallel scan, then regarding the scannable elements, that is scannable flip-flops, then level sensitive scan design, scannable transparent latches, built-in self-test, then built-in logic block observation, and memory self-test.